A bad result and even worse play from Palmeiras in the 1-1 draw with Cerro Porteño in the Libertadores. Palmeiras once again showed old weaknesses that have been with the team since 2025. And more it proves the fans and those who criticize the way Abel Ferreira's team gets its results right. We have to be fair as well. And remember, Palmeiras is indeed top of the Brazilian league. Palmeiras has already won a title in 2026 by winning the Paulista title and remains unbeaten in the Libertadores. But the problem is that these results are looking increasingly fragile, especially because of this stretch of Palmeiras' season in the second half and in this final run before the international break. Palmeiras once again started better than their opponent. Of course, there's always that gap in squad quality and financial resources, especially compared with Palmeiras' South American rivals. And that was put to the test there in Asunción, with Palmeiras looking very strong in the opening minutes. After the technical break, Abel Ferreira adjusted a few details and the team started piling up some chances, the main one with Alain, who missed an unbelievable goal right in front of the net. He could have already opened the scoring for Palmeiras. But right after that, John Arias took advantage of one of the few moments when the team managed to string together some passes and put together a beautiful team move and opened the scoring for Palmeiras. Then, the same old story, Palmeiras drops back, lets the opponent gain confidence in the game. The Cerro Porteño fans gave a lot of support from the stands, and Palmeiras, increasingly cornered, started to wear out its players. Abel Ferreira even tried to make a few substitutions, but it wasn't enough. And this time there was no Carlos Miguel to save Palmeiras. If Carlos Miguel was the hero in the last games where Palmeiras kept a clean sheet, this time he was really unlucky. Itubri took a shot from outside the box, it hit the post, bounced off the goalkeeper's back and ended up in the back of the net. Carlos Miguel wasn't at fault on the play, but this time he couldn't avoid the worst. Palmeiras had already experienced something similar against Red Bull Bragantino, where they gave the opponent some chances to equalize, and it was the same scenario against Atlético Paranaense. In those two matches, they managed to control the game a bit more, but this time they conceded the goal and were punished for the consequences of their own actions. Palmeiras again, I don't understand why Abel Ferreira's team, when they have the lead, can't keep pressing forward and instead chooses to drop their lines back. I understand that yes, it's Palmeiras' style of play to bring the opponent a bit into their own half so they can have space to run afterward. Abel Ferreira himself said in the press conference that this choice, now with Ramon Sousa a bit more central and without Roque, is exactly to attack those spaces. But in theory, it's easy. We have to see it in practice because we have a lot of theory, we have a lot of names, we have plenty of options for Palmeiras, but in practice, it's the same football as always. What keeps repeating gives full justification to those who want to criticize the paths that lead to Palmeiras results. These processes can weigh heavily later in the season. We've already seen the team slip up in that final stretch of 2025. And now, this old ghost comes back to haunt Palmeiras and especially the Palmeiras fans. Now, talking about some stats from the match, Palmeiras had a lot more shots, a lot more possession, but it wasn't that incisive possession. For example, like we've seen in these recent Champions League games. With a lot of pressure, a vertical game, Palmeiras moved the ball around the box a lot, but without much creativity. It took a long time to get some combinations between the players, and again they kept relying too much on aerial play. And it seems like this sense of urgency only comes up after they concede a goal. Palmeiras was just coasting on this away result, let's put it that way. Yes, it was a great result and it basically secured their spot, but they were punished for their own actions. I think it's definitely worth raising a red flag, especially for the coaching staff, to try to review this kind of attitude. I don't know if it's something that also comes from the players themselves, but all of this is Abel Ferreira's responsibility. Abel Ferreira has to fix this problem with the team, which usually dies out from the middle to the end of the second half. Now, about Palmeiras' issues in Group F. With this result, Palmeiras reached 5 points and still has a 1-point advantage over Cerro Porteño. But Sporting Cristal beat Junior Barranquilla, which means Sporting Cristal took the lead in Group F. So now what? Palmeiras is still in the qualifying zone, but now in second place. Unlike this first round of games, this first trio of group stage matches, Palmeiras will now have 2 games at Allianz Parque. And then they only travel to face Sporting Cristal over in Peru. So Palmeiras, who in recent seasons had things pretty easy, in fact, last season they won all their group stage matches, now they already have to sound a bit of an alarm, this sense of urgency as well, to start picking up points as quickly as possible, which we know is, yes, important. Qualifying is the first priority, but advancing in first place guarantees home field advantage in the knockout rounds, something that for Palmeiras this season is perfect. Palmeiras is still undefeated at home, whether playing at Allianz or at Arena Barueri, so this advantage, any advantage in the Libertadores, is already something positive. Being able to play the deciding match at home is even better. And now, to wrap up this video for you, I'll say it again. The performances were very weak. And what bothers me a little is how some players who have a lot of potential, especially technical potential, are performing a bit below expectations. So Flavio Lopez spent a lot of time without even touching the ball. He has to keep battling the center backs with his back to goal, and that's something that wears you out during the game. He has to be constantly holding his position, fighting with his back to the goal, holding the ball up. That's not really one of the main characteristics of Palmeiras' top scorer this season. He was a bit selfish on one play, shooting from outside the box, but it shows he wants to contribute by doing what he does best, right? He moves forward, trying to find his teammates, opening up space so Sousa can make that diagonal run through the middle of the opposing defense. Another solid game from Arthur. It really looks like Palmeiras has found a backup for Piqueres, and the one who loses out the most because of this is Jefite. In midfield, it was a pretty workmanlike game from Andreas Ferreira as well as from Marlon Freitas. A small highlight for Joarias, right? Whoever scores the goal always stands out a bit more, but as a team, there wasn't any Palmeiras performance that really stood out, either positively or negatively. But I repeat, it's very little. If we had seen a lot of action, attractive football from Palmeiras in these last rounds, maybe this slip-up wouldn't be looked at so closely. But Palmeiras has become a hostage to its own results, and especially to how it achieves those results. I'll repeat, this season is nowhere near bad. I consider Palmeiras' season to be very good. The season with the most points in the club's history in the Brazilian Championship up to the 13th round. They're still alive in the Libertadores, already have an advantage in the Copa do Brasil, and won the Paulista title. So, the results don't match the performances of the team, and of course this will definitely have an impact in this final stretch. We've already seen this have an impact in the final against Flamengo in the last edition of the Copa Libertadores, where Palmeiras didn't even get a shot on target. In that final stretch of the Brazilian Championship, after that rather strange decision by Abel Ferreira to rest some players, even with the championship still up for grabs. So Palmeiras is once again dealing with some old demons, but now in a different scenario. A little warning light is on in the Copa Libertadores. So, Palmeiras will now have to score points and use their home advantage to pull away from their opponents, get back to the top of Group F, and secure a spot in the knockout stage of the main South American club football competition. Now, to wrap it up for you, Palmeiras travels and returns to Brazil this Friday. The squad will have a quick training session at Academia de Futebol. The starting players will go through that physical recovery process and already start preparing for the derby against Santos, which is on Saturday at Allianz Parque.
So did you like this video? So like it, share it with your friends, and go ahead and subscribe to our channel and hit the bell to get notifications for all the content published here on Lance.